Hello, everyone, and welcome to From the Core. In the last episode, I had the pleasure of exploring the founders of the organization and how the company actually got started, and looking at the mission and the amount of effort that went into starting a wonderful company like Kentro. Today, I'm joined by Tom Fogarty and Tom Swerdzewski, the co-CEOs of Kentro, and the Chief Alignment Officer, Brodeur. And so today's conversation, what we're going to do is focus on really what makes Kentro as different as it is, and from the perspective of the experience of leadership and everything that they've actually very purposely put into place for the company. And also, in this conversation, I'm going to invite the three of you, Tom, and Bree, to talk about your relationship to one another as well, because that is a really important aspect, first of all, of any great team, and in particular, you as a group of individuals and everything that you've accomplished, and the reliance on the level of relationship that you have to one another. So in starting off, just a very simple question is, as you shape Kentro, and through the years, as you developed its culture, what's really significant in terms of what's bonded you and the three of you in your relationship? So, Tom Fogarty, let's start with you.
So, in terms of what has bonded the three of us, you're saying? And there are a few things that come to mind. I mean, I think, we've built a significant level of trust between the three of us over the last now 7+ years that we've worked together. I think there's, three primary things that have enabled us to develop that trust. So the first would be, the work ethic. I see what Bree and Tom put into this company. I think we've all been aligned in terms of understanding the amount of work that it takes to realize the ambitions that we've had from the company, or for the company, ever since I've been here. That willingness to put in long hours, evenings, weekends, etc. It's something that I've seen them do from the moment I got here, and I think they've seen that with me. And so we all knew that the level of effort is never going to be a challenge between the three of us, right? We were all willing to do whatever it took to realize our ambitions. I think we've also all had a similar vision of what we wanted this company to be, which is to be a long-term sustainable business, offering differentiated solutions to our clients, helping them realize higher ROI on their IT investments. And then the third thing that comes to mind is I've never heard that's not my job from either of them. I don't think they've ever heard that from me. And we all have always had our distinct, areas of influence or areas that we were primarily responsible for. But particularly, when you're a growth company that is, even at 1,000 people, considers itself still to be in startup mode, we don't have a person to do every job. And there's a lot of people that have worn multiple hats within this firm over the years. And we've all done that. We've all contributed to each other's respective areas. And I can say, Bree and Tom have contributed tremendously to the growth of the firm,
Right.
An area that I have primarily overseen, but it's been far from a, solo charge. They've both been heavily involved in differing, on differing opportunities and at differing times. And it wasn't ever either of their primary responsibilities, right? But that willingness to, when we're in a challenging situation or an urgent situation that requires all hands on deck, so to speak, right? Everybody's been always willing to do that. And
so there's
again,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So loud and clear, what comes across here is just a simple idea of dependability, so that you could always depend on each other. And there's a significant amount of trust that comes from that. And then willingness to participate, to always be involved, to not just see yourselves in individualized roles, rather to to be engaged with one another in whatever needed to be done. And there's also another piece of that you alluded to, and that's the strategic alignment. You all appear to have the same vision and a set of ambitions for what your organization can be, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. Bree, what are your thoughts in terms of what's bonded the three of you in the way that you have?
I think all of those things are true. I think we've experienced an extraordinary time period in this industry that in the preceding years, it was you had the rule book and the playbook and you knew how to accomplish what was next. I think from the beginning of this, when we started working together, um, Tom and I formally came out of the organization in the fall of 2019, and in 2020, the pandemic hit. So we had the pandemic for the first couple years when we were trying to figure out how to be a team and how to grow this company. So while we had the vision, we had an entirely new context of how to execute that vision. We've seen several administration changes in that time period, with this latest administration really overhauling how the government is procuring and administering contracts. That rulebook has really, I think you and I discussed earlier, Edgar, changed the boundaries and expectations and foundation for how this business is conducted, and how to recognize revenue and deliver for our customers in a way where the rules seem like we're all kind of figuring it out together, our customers and ourselves and all the organizations on the contracting side. So I think in this sort of crucible of change and the crucible of not really being able to control our context, what we've done a really good job is working with each other to figure out what we could control and what we could work together on to
Yeah,
achieve the long-term sustainable business. And I think sort of that crucible of change and uncertainty around us is what drove us closer together in a high pressure environment where we had set those goals that Tom alluded to of what we wanted this company to become and what we believed we could deliver.
yeah,
Um, I think that was an incredible forcing mechanism that, fortunately for folks that preceded us, but unfortunately for us, and then fortunately for us, gave us the opportunity to build that trust and that bond in a way where I think absent that, we probably wouldn't have done that because we could have just done what we known works and followed those that came before us.
yeah.
We've had to be really brave together in ways I don't think we expected.
So there's a piece of there's two thoughts I have as I'm listening to you. One is the just context. Things change around you, and so the lead transition to lead change within an organization in the broader context and what's happening around you is a key factor. And so um, this idea of being able to shift and move very quickly and work with each other to do that. And it sounds like for a great deal of the time, you've been able to do that, to be aligned as you went through that. Tell us a little bit about when you were misaligned. In other words, context is changing. You have differing ideas about where you may want to take the company or strategically think about it. What were those moments like, and how did you all respond to those?
I would say there's a lot of deep breathing. We did a lot of breathing exercises together, and there was a lot of just we're gonna we're
You
gonna be
actually lead a breathing exercise?
we did I don't know that we led them. I think we all instinctively knew to inhale before we exhaled. And took the pause instead of the reaction. I think we've all experienced the reaction in previous
Uh-huh.
positions and in personal situations where the reaction doesn't drive to the outcome we want. So we've really learned with each other to just say, "Hey, I need a minute," and then we come back and we stay with the problem. And I think what we've done really successfully is make the problem or the process the bad guy in the room, and then we all are here to figure our way to the answer. And I don't know that I can think of a single instance. I don't know if you guys can, where I know we are all, and Tom Swerdzewski's not, but we're all very type A. Very we've thought of had the argument in the shower in our head where we've come to it and we've like I've played this conversation 10 times already. And then when we come together, I don't know that we've ever walked away with 100% the thing that I've never walked out of a conversation or decision with it's 100% the way I thought it was gonna go, but it's usually some Frankenstein of what Tom thought or Sword thought or I thought, and then we figure out how that really becomes the answer for all of us to get behind. But it's that blend, that necessary friction, and I think we've done a really good job over the years of turning the problem into the problem and not the person. And it's something that I've learned here, frankly, and learned with this team is to make the problem and not personify it into it's Sword being a jerk or whoever. It's this thing that happened, and how do we come together to solve it together? And that I think is where the trust and the respect comes from. And I think one of the things that Fogarty didn't touch on, and I'm taking all the good stuff. I'm sorry, Sword, so I'll let you have a minute here. Um, uh, I think where the trust comes from is the extreme expertise too. So
Uh-huh.
um, these these two are extraordinary. I believe I am also extraordinary, and they know that. But I think when you have extraordinary talent and expertise, and you tie that to the level of effort and the give a shits that we all show up with every day, that's where the respect and trust comes from. I know that they know how to either what the answer is or how to find the answer
Hmm.
for the things that they are responsible for, and likewise. And if they don't, I know they'll go find it and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Hey, Tom Sword. Um, so let me come back to the question. What do you think is the significant glue, the bond between the three of you?
I think these two covered it pretty darn well, but I guess I can one element that they didn't bring is humor. I think that's one thing that the three of us shared generally with the entire staff. And we do a pretty good job of assembling a group of like-minded folks that also bring humor to the table, which makes it a little bit fun amidst a pretty chaotic sometimes environment that we work in, and a stressful one. I mean, we have a lot on our plate, as do all of our folks, but it never ceases to amaze me when we are in meetings or on conference calls and whatnot, the level of humor that this team and our collective group can bring to the forefront, and it actually makes it an enjoyable place to work, and it kind of lightens the room a little bit, which allows us to kind of center things a little bit differently. And when we see conflicts, and you're able to insert some of that humor into the the conflict itself, and when you're having discussions around how to solve joint problems, humor kind of helps break up some of the seriousness, and it kind of recenters the room quite often for us. And so I think that's one thing that the two of them did not share. I also think that's something that we generally share with our staff that helps build that trust and camaraderie amongst our teams, and it allows us to operate very differently than some of our competitors, especially some of our folks came from a lot of large businesses that operate in a very serious manner, 24/7. We don't do that. We're very serious when we need to. We're very serious about supporting the mission of our customers. But when it comes to our internal way of doing it, we do it with a lot of humor. And I think that's something that's really important. And it's a glue that's kind of held our company together over the years.
Yeah, it sounds powerful. The whole idea of humor has a way of pointing us to the truth, and at times to confront truths. And when you're taking something seriously or not, do you ever get a sense that humor could also then be used to avoid? A question
Certainly.
for all three of you. And what happens then?
That's a great question.
I think we've had people have tried to use humor as a deflection over a serious conversation. That's not productive. Um, that's Tom
How do
is
you
talking about more
how do you
just,
call that out when it
having
happens?
what's
Uh,
that?
when it's happening, how do you call it out? Do you just say, "Hey, this is," I mean,
Well,
how do you do it?
if they're not answering the question and instead telling a joke and you're trying to have a serious
Uh,
conversation, that's usually a good tell.
mhm.
Like Tom's referring to more just, we have the serious conversations when we need to, but in the lead up to them or after them, we also can insert humor and have fun with it all.
So that brings to mind. Oh, go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
To say one other thing about that is I think one thing that's very unique about our company is we just allow people to be themselves. I think we joke all the time about some of the characters that we have that work for us and how enjoyable it is to work with them, and how much honestly I cherish those moments that we get to spend with them, because they are very unique, as Bree sort of mentioned. We have some very unique, very talented individuals that also have amazing personalities, and nobody sort of is shunned from showing that here at Kentro, and we welcome that. And that makes it a very enjoyable place to work.
So the two pieces show up in that. One is you, be yourself. And that comes up often in the conversations with the three of you. And then there's this humor piece and the influence on the culture. So the three of you have this bond. Just what's your experience in terms of new people coming in? As you mentioned, here's new people coming in. You're a quickly growing company, and here's this thread of humor and goodness that comes through the company. Is that something that actually gets addressed as people come in, or is that something that people just you expect them to pick that up through experience? Because one would think if somebody's not picking it up, that could be problematic too.
I don't know that we take it on as an onboarding item, just as a we take ourselves unseriously. We take our work very seriously is something we've been saying a little more often. I think we show it. So in our all hands, there's good natured teasing and joshing around. I think in our team meetings when we are interacting with various components of the organization or various teams, there's a lot of good natured ribbing, and I think what we show is um, I think what you see in a lot of leaders is they take themselves very seriously. They can't take it, but they can give it. I think for all of us, we all, I fully enjoy if I'm going to serve it up, getting it back, and I appreciate a really good dig or a dad joke or all of those, like a really good pun. We have one employee who's just really
You
phenomenal
get
with the pun.
disappointed when somebody doesn't?
Oh,
It's kind of
yeah,
like, hey, come on, give
absolutely.
me something here.
Let's play. I think it shows a level of intellectual curiosity and wit,
Mhm.
that speed to integrate into the culture in a way.
Quote
If you
unquote,
can,
be
if
with
you
the
can play on
program.
that level,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
So I think we demonstrated in a lot of our public facing and company facing engagements is there's always there's an element of something there for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, there is. And so humor is a value in a way, and a lot of values within the context of culture. I mean, we speak to values and beliefs, and then there's those that are just genuinely part of a culture that people need to be able to understand and adapt to in some way, or become a part of and use well. I'd like to shift gears just a little bit around that too. Then this idea of humor and trust, and that you will engage me seriously when we need to. So you've often said that trust is an operating system, or the operating system of Kentro is this idea of trust. So tell me a little bit about what that actually means in practice. How do you see it day in and day out?
So I think I probably have the least day-to-day insight, but I can tell you what the strategy and the alignment part of it is. And so for me, it links strongly to the expertise culture. So where the trust comes in is like I shared about these gents and their expertise. I trust that someone in that position has the expertise to be in that position and have the decision authority and behave and lead in a way or deliver in a way that is aligned to our expectations for the outcomes for either that contract or for that corporate services function. I think that trust at that expertise level is very important. I think we've spent a lot of time and energy and investment in building processes that we can lean on and making process carry the load on a lot of the things that we just need to trust are happening, whether they're compliance functions or just regular business as usual functions in finance or quality or wherever it sits in corporate services. Those processes, BD, we know that that process is going to work because we've tested it. We've battle tested a lot of them, um, and that being able to trust the process and the people, I think, has worked really well for us. To then from an organizational structure, so when folks do come in, they're not guessing. That there's no unsureness about where to go for this or what happens if this or if I do this, what that is. There's very clear delineated process across the organization and very strong experts leading those functions. Um,
So
and then with
Sword,
each other, I think we demonstrate that a lot.
Mhm. So Sword, if I may, because you lead a significant number of people in the organization. So here's this idea of system, process, building consistency of how things get done to be able to leverage expertise. And yet the organization, at the same time, the organization is growing. It's growing quickly. So what are you doing differently now than something that you weren't doing before to make sure that this communication of expertise, the communication of the expectation is finding its way to everyone?
I think one thing that, we started doing, a lot more recently and doing better is accountability to expectations, I think is one thing. And leading to that. When we were smaller, it was a lot easier, right? Because we were able to just sort of communicate with everybody individually as needed as leaders of the company. Now it's kind of enabling our next level of leaders to manage through that accountability and helping them kind of structure what that should look like and how to hold their folks accountable and how to build trust with their individual teams, which it's a lot of work. I mean, I think that's the one thing that we always talk about to underscore, like, we didn't just end up this way as leaders ourselves. The three of us didn't just end up being aligned and trust each other right out of the gate. We put a ton of work, a lot of effort into that. And I think part of this is helping folks learn how to do that. It's also leading through example and showing them how we do it as a team. And it's sort of systemizing and putting some structures in place so that they sort of understand what that expectation looks like and how we do it within the firm. If that answers your question.
Yes. Yeah. Because the key, as far as I can tell, the key is as the organization grows, that every person's able to understand it, to articulate it.
Right.
Much like it, if you would ask them to articulate their part of the organization, what the strategies are, and what they're contributing to. Which brings up another great topic around the three of you and how you work, and that's that what you mentioned before, Bree, is the strategic alignment. You mentioned it as well, Tom. The idea of strategic alignment. You're at the forefront of it, Tom Fogarty. You're at the forefront of it in terms of yes, you all are, in terms of the business development piece and how you going about it. What are some aspects of keeping trust in the system when you're constantly finding new targets, new ways to build the company and to grow the company?
Is that a question for me? Okay. Um, I think probably, I guess the main thing that comes to mind to touch on what Tom mentioned about, instituting the right level of accountability within the organization. I mean, we have been using the OKR process for 6 years now, right? And we've done that so that we are openly communicating to the company, to our respective teams. These are what our objectives are for every given year, right? These are the key results that we're looking for. So we're communicating that openly. We've had a lot of people who've come over, that have made comments about, appreciating the transparency about what it is we're trying to accomplish every year, what our priorities are, and that they hadn't always gotten access to that. And they'd been asked to do their jobs without understanding the broader context or the long-term goals, right, that we're all striving for. So, I think being transparent about what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish, that also then puts us in a situation where we have to hold ourselves accountable if we don't, because it's visible to everyone. So I think that contributes to the trust, and then it creates a situation where, we are publicly accountable to the folks in the firm based on the objectives that we set out at each year, and we score them and track them and present them to everybody, and people can see where our successes and our failures are, and we have to own those as leaders. And so it's not something we expect them to do, but don't hold ourselves to the same standard.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So I'd like to come back to something too, and that's around that strategy. So consistency, the OKRs. How about when things change rapidly? My experience of the three of you is change is a rapid. It's you guys are whitewater rafters, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So when you're in that white water, what's the key to success there? Because the OKRs, they set up a sense of predictability. This is where we're going. And you're also asking people to shift very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about how over the last 6 years, we've been essentially a different firm every 18 months, right? And so we've been in this constant process of having to re-examine our strategy, refine our strategy and approach, refine our investments, right? All to align to where we are today, not where we were 18 months ago, right? Or in instances like last year, we sat down and we did our annual planning session, and then, our entire industry got turned upside down 2 months later. And so we had to revisit all of that. I think OKR's corporate strategy, they're fluid, in our view, right? Like this is not a static thing. Industry is constantly changing, technology is constantly changing. So we have to be flexible and fluid with our planning and our strategy. And, last year we redid our entire corporate strategy towards the end of the third quarter of the year, because we felt like the changes in the industry warranted it, right? But I'd say one other thing that sticks with me a lot about last year and going through that was we didn't overreact, because there's a lot of risk in that as well, right? And the way the environment was in the industry from, let's say, February through June, it wasn't the same come August. And so if we had permanently altered the way we were doing things based off of the environment in March and April, that wouldn't have taken us down the right path. So I think that's always a challenge, is trying to find that right balance between having the right sense of urgency, not being complacent or afraid to act, but also not overreacting till you have a decent sample size. And what we feel is more clarity on where we feel the industry is headed. So last year was a good example of that. We didn't change everything right away. We made small adjustments, and then after 6 months, we really refined and then updated our strategy.
I think the only thing and Sword, I've got a question for you here too, to add on to that as a thought is, I think the thing that I thought when I was looking up at the leadership I was following earlier in my career is that they had all the answers. And I think one of the things that we do really well is ask a lot of questions and spend a lot of time talking to others in industry. What are you doing? What's going on? How are you handling things? What's your version of the right world to measure and your version of an OKR? How are you handling that period of time? We spend a lot of time out asking a lot of questions and bringing those thoughts and ideas back together and putting them into the mixing bowl to figure out what we want to take and what we want to leave behind from advice, from guidance, from best practices for what works here. I don't think I had an understanding of that when I was coming up, that a lot of the answers weren't already here, that I wasn't going to know them at this point. I wasn't going to be the person that had all the information. That a lot of that came from the relationships we've all built over 20, 25, 30 years in this industry. That feedback and those conversations have been so valuable for us, especially through every year we're a new company, and especially last year. Sword, I know you spent a lot of time having those conversations.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is something we talk about a lot. It's sort of the leading through inquiry perspective, and always making sure that we're, one, reading the pulse of our employees and how they feel and how they're reacting to these different situations that come up as we're leading the business. And also, something that I think both of you do extremely well, which is keeping your eye out for what's happening in the industry and constantly gathering information from different folks in industry through our customers. I think we all do that really well, and we collectively share that information with one another and with our teams to help develop our perspectives. And I think that's something that I would agree with you. It's different in every company. And I think one thing that has been very successful with us is the ability to do that. And the fact that we don't have people that kind of want to keep that information nice and tight, right? We're trying to build a group of folks that are collaboratively helping us lead and run the company effectively. That's not for everybody. I think some of the bigger businesses don't lead that way. And I think you're sort of alluding to that a little bit, Bree, in terms of your experience coming up. But I think that's something that we have done extremely well, and we've been able to sort of really listen to our employees effectively an industry and be able to formulate really good decisions as a result of that. Being open-minded to that is something we're very good at.
It's an interesting element that you just mentioned, Tom. That's the idea of you're all speaking to the idea of inquiry and being curious, and that curiosity piece. And I think one of the things that gets overlooked is so often um, we talk about great leadership. It has so much to do with asking the right questions. And so often, great leadership is less about the question, it's about listening to the answer. And we can ask a certain question and then we don't get the answer we expected. And the ability to be open to that and receptive to that, whether it's an employee, somebody in the market, wherever it is, especially when you're seeking people's experience and expertise, as you all do, at the rate that you do, having that openness becomes so, so critical to success and being able to role model that through the organization. Yeah, I see. So you've hit on some really, really good points here through this through this conversation. Dependability around and expertise and dependability on each other, willing to go, um, and the bond between the three of you early on, the willingness to go that quote unquote extra mile or whatever it is to get something done and to help each other to succeed. The strategic alignment piece, the OKRs, flexibility as well as predictability, having stability through change while you're engaging people in a willingness and desire to keep changing in the way that they're thinking and keep strategies moving forward. And the key piece word that you brought into it, humor and the aspect of humor and what it brings to the table and how it impacts everyone around you. And in a way, humor is a great way to also point to each other to the truth and to confront the realities of what and to accept it in a way that is um, that's both genuine and meaningful, and also there's a lightheartedness to recognize that what is, and we've got to accept reality the way it is. And then this piece around curiosity and inquiry and those pieces, and I think in all four of those are bonds between the three of you. And that's my experience of the three of you and working with you in the way that I have, by the way. And I'm also very honored to do so because I do believe, Bree, you used the term a couple of times before, you're extraordinary. And so here's the extraordinary part about Kentro that everyone alludes to is that, and I've heard people have actually told me this as well, is that it just feels different. There's a difference here. There's something in Kentro that feels different. And very often people can't really put their finger on it. You begin to ask them and it takes them a while. They do find a path to getting there. So what I'd like to do is ask each of the three of you, what do you see then, including what we've talked about in this conversation? What is it that makes it feel different? What is it?
We've talked about this a lot. We've asked each other this question on how to quantify it and qualify it. So I'm gonna call last here and let you guys go first.
Oh, you go first to go last. Clever.
I will go first just to say that I don't think I have an answer. Like Bree said, we've talked about this a lot, and it's kind of a fun conversation that we have internally with other folks within the firm too. I think that I doubt that there's any one thing, right? It's probably a combination of a bunch of things. But the best I've come up with summing it up is, Tom touched on this earlier, but just that we're very serious about delivering for our customers, right, in their mission, but don't take ourselves too seriously. And I think that combination comes across when we engage with clients, that we are clearly bringing expertise, but we're also there to understand their perspective and their constraints and their environment, rather than trying to force feed a solution right onto them without properly understanding their perspective, right, and what they're truly seeking to accomplish. And so, I think that is the best I've been able to come up with.
And do you think the experience for the employees, I mean, the EX is the same as that CX, the customer experience?
I think that's where the humor, that Tom talked about, and also Bree talking about, I think
So
we
let me
take digs
challenge
at
you a
each
little bit
other.
here.
We
Yeah.
take digs at each other far more than we do at our
I noticed.
spikes. So I think you've witnessed plenty of it over the years.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a good example. But I don't think any of them doubt that we're serious about our work and what we're trying to accomplish here, right? But they can also see
Yeah.
us poking fun at each other on a quite regular basis.
So when that's happening, when you've got you don't want to be serious, you don't want to be light, and you get that sense of it's happening in the moment. How, in 2 words or less, how do you feel when that's happening? You yourself.
When what exactly is happening?
Well, you've got a problem of a serious nature, and yet, there's a lightheartedness in the room. Things are gelling it the way you want them to. How does it actually feel?
I think it's the definition of flow state, right? You get to be yourself and do the thing that you're there to do, right? You're not it's flow state for me. I can be me
Mhm.
as a whole person, and I can lend the room or the problem whatever intelligence or wisdom I have to solve the problem. That's like everything is flowing.
Okay. So that's the state of flow. Yeah.
I would say fortunate. I feel like
Oh,
I genuinely feel
nice.
fortunate to work with the characters that Tom mentioned. I mean, we work hard, and there's a lot of work that goes into what we do, and it's a grind.
That's a
So
that's a
having
great
those
answer.
folks that can lighten the room and the meeting and make it not feel like such a grind is, and I think it's also, I think all three of us would say that that is the style that we want. That's how we want to work. We want to work hard. We want to be serious about what we're trying to accomplish, but we also want to be able to enjoy it and um, be able to have a fun atmosphere. And so that's feels fortunate to have that, because like we don't, like your earlier question of how do we it's not part of our orientation or onboarding, and we don't go to people and say, hey, you need to start cracking more jokes in meetings if you want to be successful here. It's something that happens
Yeah,
organically. And
I'm
there's
adding that to the OKRs.
there's there's power and influence, and very often it's the unspoken forms of power and influence that make things work. And it's part of
very
this
organic.
conversation right here. What really makes it work and what makes it different? Swerd, what are your thoughts on that question? So what is it?
To answer I
Yeah, when
guess,
it feels different, what is it?
what feels different. Um, I mean, I think we talked about this a lot, and we've talked about this since the inception of the company, is like, we're going to do things the way we want to do them. Right. And I think we have always sort of done that. And we talk a lot about, I don't want to like assume that we're extremely unique, but I actually think we are, that feels very liberating. We get to do what we want to do in service to our customers in this business and building this business. We don't have a lot of restrictions that some of our competitors have. We've built this business organically. We have not taken on private equity. We've not merged multiple companies together into one company, which seems to be the nature of a lot of government contracting businesses in their path. We also have a unique organizational structure. Some would find, even in hearing when you introduced us, that is unique. The way in which we operate is very much our own, and I think that in itself leads to a lot of, it puts me at ease. It makes me feel very comfortable in leading the company, and that we're kind of beholden to ourselves and this group and the group that's on this phone and the company underneath us. So I think that's unique. I guess
Yeah,
to answer your question.
that's a really great answer as well. Yeah, the sense of what it feels unique, and then go back to the idea of feeling fortunate. Mhm. Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else you want to share about the bond between the three of you?
I generally
I
don't
got
like
it.
them, Edgar. This is all a show. I don't really like
Ah,
them,
there you go.
but
Well, we'll
I
mute
was
him.
setting that up as best as I could and waiting.
You did a good
Yeah.
job.
Great.
So I talk about it I just watched Love Actually again, and I usually only watch that during the holidays. But there's a scene when
Oh,
the aged rocker looks at his business manager and he says somewhere along the line, "You guys became you became the love of my life," right? And I don't think any of us, I mean, maybe Sword and Panakin when they first fell in love 11 years ago, 12 years ago, maybe they knew. But I don't think when I had pho with Fogarty 7 years ago, I thought these were going to be the people that we called when things went wrong in our personal lives, or we had a crisis to handle, or we needed help, or we had, just deep moments where we're questioning our own leadership abilities. Did I handle that right? That just wildly vulnerable moments, personally and professionally. I would not have guessed 7 years ago that we would be here, but fortunately and unfortunately, like Billy, whatever his name is from Love Actually, these are the ding dongs I call.
thank you. All right. Well, with that being said, then let me just once again say thank you. Thanks for letting me spend this time with you, for allowing me to be part of this conversation that is so meaningful and has so much depth and wisdom connected to it. So I want to thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
and with that, then, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to this edition from the core, and we look forward to you joining us again in the future. Thank you.